everybody that's here for this next session. This is Peter Wolf, who'll be talking about strength training for Wushu athletes. Peter, just so you know, we've got 31 people on Zoom and a few more on Facebook. I'm really excited to be moderating this panel. One, because Peter is an extremely talented trainer, but also because he's a good friend of mine. This is Peter Wolf from Rogue Wolf Training. He's from Medford, Oregon, specializing in strength, flexibility, mobility, and Tai Chi training. He holds a number of personal training certifications, including he's a Strong First instructor, Flexible Steel and Indian Club instructor, as well as a K3 Combat Movement Systems instructor. He started his Wushu training at the University of Oregon when we were both students there, and he continued his training in China at the Beijing University of Physical Education. So without further ado, this is Peter Wolf.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, guys. First time doing an event just exactly like this with a moderator. So if you do have questions, try to feed them through Brandon, and I will try to address them later as we can. And that this is my understanding that there'll be a series in the seminar, and we'll be able to build on some of our concepts. Today is going to be about body weight exercise that you can do. So no excuses as far as getting started, right? We're going to have about 10 to 15 minutes that is body weight warming up, a joint by joint warm up that I call the recharge. And it's something that you could do before weightlifting, before your Wushu practice, in between. It's something you can do at any time, the recharge. We'll do that as kind of one section. Then we're going to go into some different archetypes that will lead into some strength training. And that'll be some stuff on the floor, but you really don't need any equipment. If you can get up and down from the ground, you got enough space to spread out a little bit, you're going to be just fine. And then we'll introduce at least two strength exercises and how to program that. So you can kind of start where you are today and start getting stronger right now. And then maybe at the very end, we can chat a little bit about what that next step might be in strength training, because you might be just getting started. Maybe you're a seasoned professional, but the principles are the same. It's just the intensity and the volume might be a little different. So here comes the recharge first, the joint by joint checkup. I'm going to tilt my camera just a little bit, help you see from head to toe a little better. So I'm standing tall, maybe even like a Wushu pose, right? Get your extension in your hips, squeeze your buns. Extend your spine, pull your shoulder blades back. Your hands can be behind your back or in your pockets. We're going to go up and down through the neck about 20 times. I'm going to go down for 2 to 4 seconds. It does not need to be exactly 2 to 4 seconds. No points will be deducted for this one. But the idea is to keep the stretch active and not stop and hold for an excessive amount of time. Keep your stretch active. Keep moving back and forth through your range of motion at about 2 to 4 seconds per rep. Because I'm talking, I may miscount. Don't hold it against me. We're going to do roughly 20 or 10 per side. Going side to side with the neck now. We went up and down like a yes nod. Now side to side like a no nod. Exaggerate your breathing. And what I mean by that is just to slow it down a little bit, pressurize it. In through the nose and out through the mouth or through the nose. Start slow, but be okay moving into sport speed a little closer to what you might need in your actual sport in Wushu. Start slow, add a little sport speed. We went up and down, we went side to side. Now we're going to make circles. Give me your best Stevie Wonder impression here and roll the neck. Roll the neck like a figure 8 or infinity sign. We're going to circle. And I'm going to roll my circle slow at first, faster if it feels good, a little more sport speed, and maybe add some complexity, which would mean changing direction. When you're training, you're trying to bring your body a little more back to balance. Any sport is going to be a little imbalanced by nature. You're going to have a dominant side. You twist more in one direction than the other. So in our warm-up, in our training for strength and durability, we're trying to be more even on both sides. We're going into the wrists next, the knuckles on the wrists. I want you to clench the fists and extend out the fingertips about 10, 20 times. Clench for 2 to 4 seconds, extend for 2, 3, and 4 seconds. So notice when there's a direction that maybe you don't turn as well in one direction or the other. Maybe there's a stiff side. Don't hide from it. Just go slow, warm it up. You don't need to be good at warming up, right? You just need to do it. We're into the wrists now. Flex your wrists back to their comfortable extreme. Curl your fingertips like the fists we made and flex the wrist down to the opposite extreme. Up for 2, 3, and 4 seconds, one extreme. Down for 2, 3, and 4 seconds. Can add a little sport speed. Could add complexity, high, low, same time. Okay, we were working through the knuckles, now the wrists, and now the elbows. We're moving upstream. Take your both arms forward at roughly temples height, deep bend your elbow and extend your arm to straight. You're gonna deep bend the elbow and roll the circle to straight. Exaggerate the breathing, pressurize it. Move into sport speed where it feels good. Slow it down where you need to. We're making circles to the elbows, deep bend and extend. And then we're going to do almost the same thing, but changing the shoulder angle. So you're going to rotate your circle below. You kind of breeze by the ribs. If the first circle was temples height, then this one's more rib level. Now we went in both directions. We did high and low. So here's how you add the complexity element again, high and low, same time. Or trade. Or like we did the neck, can you reverse direction? So don't worry about getting exactly 20. Don't chase pain, make it comfortable, but do try to add a little bit where you can. We did the knuckles, the wrists, the elbow, now the shoulders. Taking it up to your shoulders, I want you to hike them high and drop them low 10, 20 times. Make some circles. Ten or so front and back. Okay. And then pull the both arms apart from each other. You're going to twist. Internal and external rotation. If you had your thumbs up, we could be going one thumb up, one thumb down. You could be pushing and reaching like a little dance like an Egyptian. Twist. I'm even getting a little bit of neck and torso. It's okay. But mostly the shoulders, wringing out the shoulders. We're moving into the center of the body from the wrist to the elbows to the shoulders. And now your mid-spine. Velcro your arms to your sides as if you had no arms. Try to extend your spine from the ribs. So it's a bit of a puffing up and a collapse. Open up and close to the chest. Let your arms move more, your shoulder blades slide more, making the movement a little more global. I'm going to use that word a couple of times today, global versus local. If I wanted the motion to be more local in my spine, then no arms, no neck. If I want it more global, then everybody gets to play. Shoulder blade, neck, spine. I want you to be able to do both and to differentiate a little bit. So we were dealing with the mid-spine. We still are going to deal with the mid-spine. You're going to bend laterally or side bend, like bringing your ribs closer to your pelvis. If you do this very locally, then you don't need a lot of arms, don't need a lot of neck movement. If it feels good, open your leverage up. Lengthen your arms. Push high, push low. Still stretching that rib space, lateral spine, but a little more global, bigger movement. So you got fast and slow. You've got local and global. And you've got your rep range to play with, a few elements here. We're going to still stay with the mid-spine, but this time to twist. Local twist, I'm going to zip up the pelvis, the legs, Really short leverage for my twists, pretty local in the ribs. If I open my stance and open my arms, it's a little more global. Twist, I'm pulling on some different tissue, feels good. And then maybe long leverage, swing the arms. Using your leverage is a big principle for how you can challenge yourself more with only body weight as a tool. When you don't have a 10-pound weight and a 15-pound weight and then a 20-pound weight to progress, we need tools like leverage, angle, vector. And we're going to talk about that today with the body weight exercises, how to make them appropriately safe, but also appropriately difficult. And leverage is a big tool. We're going to move from the mid back to the lower back. Now, notice a lot of what we're doing, neck, spine, up, down, side, side, then circles. And it's similar here. We're going to go front to back with the lumbar, pelvis, and hips as our focal point. So I think ribs to pelvis, open up that space, ribs to pelvis, then close up the space. What it is not is just a hip hinge where there's no spinal flexion. Try to flex and extend through your back. Just the lower back's got the focus. Side to side. If we went front to back 10 and more times, we should go side to side 10 and more times. Push the hips out, push the hips out. Part of what you're doing in this kind of warm-up is lubricating the joints. You're moving synovial fluid. So especially the big hips and shoulders, most of the fluid's at. And so part of the warm-up is useful even if you don't feel a stretch in your muscles. You don't have to chase a muscular stretch. We're going to do that later, and we're going to do the stretching in a way that it will be also a strength practice. This is more of a joint warm-up. You don't have to intensely stretch your muscles. Went front to back 10 times, side to side 10 times, corner to corner. Is that funny one? Front corner pocket, back corner pocket, left front pocket, right back pocket. Try to get your corners through your lumbar, pelvis, and hip. And then we'll do the circles last. So a lot of the good is coming from the 10 to 20 reps of general rhythmic movement. It's coming from your pressured breathing. You don't need to be working intensely muscularly now. And really, you should have a pretty good control of the breathing as well. We don't get too cardiovascularly stressed in through the nose, out through the mouth, pressured breath. We just worked the lumbar, pelvis, and hip, and we're going to go a little further with it. It's going to help us later in some of the drills. I want you to try to imagine your pelvis right now like a bucket or a bowl of water and try to tip that bucket out forward. This is an anterior pelvic tilt. I've shortened up some of the musculature of the back, lengthened some on the front. I'm going to reverse it, posterior tilt, anterior tilt, and then side to side tilt. Notice this is a little more local than what we did earlier. We went side to side, lumbar, pelvis, hip, right? Back and forth. But this is a tilt. It's not so global. Okay, and you didn't know it was going to be a dance lesson today, but if I combine the front and the back with the side to side, then you can get circles. You can get a circular action and roll the hips forward or back. We did it for the neck, right? We did our Stevie Wonder. That it's similar. Do your cha-cha, salsa, one of those Latin dance moves anyway, to roll the hips. Stay with the hip as your focal point now. We're going to still the pelvis in the next drill. To still your pelvis, imagine a belly laugh or clearing your throat, a sneeze. The muscles that contract there are going to connect the bony surfaces, pelvis and ribs. You're like a plank. Take the weight off your right heel. Internally and externally rotate your hip. We're doing the twist. Hip joints isolated, pelvis is still, belly button still, ribs still, heart still, skull still, head still. Try to just get your internal and external hip rotation. 10 or 20 times, both sides. This is going to pay off later. We're going to do this later in a way that is more of a strength practice. You can read that as more stress, maybe less comfortable. Right now, make it comfortable. All right, we're dealing with the hips. We're going to stay with the hips. It's okay to hold on to something in this next portion. Balance is not the objective. It's not a balancing exercise. So if you feel off balance, hold on to something. If you don't feel off balance, that's good too. Circle your single hip. Hold on to something if you need to. Loose goose hip. Try to circle. I'm going to go 10 or so each direction. I'm breathing in that exaggerated way, trying to breathe more exclusively through the nose. I'm trying to lengthen my exhales and try on both sides. 10 or so circles in each direction. Lubricating the joints, trying to spend a little extra time on these bigger joints that have more of the synovial fluid, your hips and your shoulders. Now we're moving downstream from the hips to the knees. Again, holding on to something, not against the rules. No points will be deducted. Otherwise, you can take kind of a golden rooster, stands on one leg stance. You can get into that single leg balancing and try to circle your knee. Loose goose, the knee suspended. I'm rolling circles like, I'll give you a different angle here. Stir a pot. And in both directions. On one level, it makes sense as athletes that you would want to stress every joint every day in almost every way. And that would keep your capacity up. You would be more resilient, more injury proof. That's what this is for. We're taking most of the major joints of the body and we're moving them in most of the ways that they can move. And it's to get a lubrication in the joint space. It's to get a little bit of heat and fluid. It's also a self-evaluation. So you can be checking out right now as you're doing plantar flexion, dorsiflexion for the ankle. It's warming things up. It's also evaluating the health of that joint a little bit, maybe influencing your decision-making for later. Like, things feel good today. I'm going to train hard. This is a good day to lift heavy. Maybe you find out through this recharge, this warm-up, that actually my hip, knee, and ankle are a little bit messed up. And maybe it's not going to be the high intensity day that you had planned. So it's a warm-up, but it's also an assessment. It's something that you can do daily, and you can do this before you go into strength training. It can be independent of. You could just be doing this and then you're off to work and you still got practice at night. But it's going to add some resiliency. It's going to add a little bit of range of motion, but just by getting out of your own way, by taking the parking brakes off of things. We didn't necessarily stretch intensely the muscles, but we did work all the major joints. The next few things we do from standing. So that was the recharge. We went from head to toe through the major joints of the body. The next few things we do are some archetypes, some shapes that we're going to make. And I want you to be able to revisit this throughout the hour to retest it. So one of our first shapes is going to be the hinge. I'm going to give you a side view. I've got my both legs evenly loaded, the pelvis in a middle position, kind of neutral between the tilt forward, tilt back. You're going to press back on your hips to wedge them. Your knees can be softly bent, don't need to be locked out straight. And the back is flat. So if you're familiar with a deadlift or a good morning, yoga has positions like this. It's a hinge of the hip joint, a hip dominant hinge and return. I want you to try that between 10 and 20 times like we did our other joint movements. Inhale the way down. Exhale the up. If you can keep the back pretty flat, then you can continue to try to go as low as you comfortably can and then extend. You can add a little bit of sports speed to the movement like we did with our other joint warm-ups. Relax, contract. That hip hinge is one of the most powerful human movements that we've got. And so we can translate into things like a broad jump, long jump. It can translate into things like a kettlebell swing or a barbell deadlift. It's a good archetype that we want to have down, the foundation. So here's your hinge and some rules we can apply. I don't really want this to be an inversion. So as low as you're going, don't put your head lower than your pelvis. Okay. We can go quite low, but we won't put the head below the pelvis and actually invert. And then on the way up, let's not hyperextend through the lumbar, pelvis, and hip. We'll extend, lock out, tight glutes, braced abs, like a clearing your throat, that little bit of tension, not hyperextending the way up. And so that'll be our archetype for hinging. Hinge, return. And we're going to test our hinge out in a few different ways. Now we're going to go to another archetype, squatting. Similar, but different. The hinge, hip dominant. Squatting is going to have a little more demand than knee. I'm going to put more stress into the front of the pelvis and thighs, quads, versus more of the stress in the glutes and hamstrings that you did on the hinge. So we're going to do between 10 and 20 squats. And you're going to try to come down to your comfortable maximum. Draw the hips down and back. I'm going to let my arms forward as a counterbalance. And then extend the hips all the way back up. I'm still going to inhale on the way down. Exhale on the up. I'm going to go slow at first, 2 to 4 seconds to get some good feedback. I'm going to do about 10 to 20 in total. You could, if you need it, hands on thighs for sure. We're still warming things up. It's okay. You could be holding onto a table or a chair and have a counterbalance. You could be moving more sports speed. Things are feeling good. But get an idea about that squat, because we're going to have a better squat before the hour's over. This is going to be a longer conversation, probably for a different day. But for our athletes getting really strong, squatting is probably going to be part of the program one way or another. Lots of different ways to squat. We're going to work today on making squatting appropriately difficult with just your body weight by using different angles, moving into more single leg options, and ultimately a pistol single leg squat. But if you don't or not able to do the single leg stuff, there's lots of other loaded squats, ways to get super strong with the legs, different places to put a weight or a bar. Right now, this is your non-denominational squat. It's not an overhead squat or a high bar back squat or a front squat, just squat archetype. Okay, and if that's feeling okay, then we're going to head in another direction and get into the floor in just a minute. So take a minute from standing, grab a sip if you need it. I'm going to meet you on the floor. I'm going to change my angle just a little bit to make it easier to see what's on the floor. Brandon will let me know if that's not true. All right. So that was the looks good? Cool. If that was the recharge, what we did from standing, then what this next little piece is going to be is a reset. We are going to reset the order, the firing pattern, if you want, for your muscles. This is also non-denominational. It doesn't belong to Pilates or kettlebells or something like that. It's just physiological progressions. If you looked at this from the perspective of a baby, this is tummy time, right? You're a month old. How do you start to get strong? You start with tummy time. We're going to be on our belly. Crying is optional. You don't have to be a baby, but we're like a baby. And your arms are at your side, like you're unplugged, wiggle, wiggle, like an unplugged robot. You're going to start to lift the head. And 5 or 10 times, slowly lift only the head. That means I'm not even going to lift my jaw. This is just taking the face away from the floor in order that you can breathe. So breathing is the why. Why am I lifting my head? So I can breathe better. Now, lift your chin as well after you have that feeling of lifting your neck and only your neck. So you're not lifting your shoulders, you're not lifting through your whole spine, just your neck. Then lift your chin. Now you're lifting to see. If we're using our baby example, like where's the milk? Just lift the head. Try to see more of the room. And it's going to get a little more intense for those extensing muscles in your neck and your back. The first reflexes we're waking up downstream, even to the hips. Your eyes will talk to your hips. We know it's a big deal. The energy and power you hold in your eyes in Chinese martial arts. And there is physiology to back that up, that the reflex of your gaze sends energy down your spine. So try to see more of the room. You're going to hit a limit though, where you can't go any lift further higher unless you get more help. So more help is my mid back. Now my shoulders are starting to come up, going downstream. Try 5 or 10 times to start to draw those shoulders up, and energy is going to move down your extensors. Still try to breathe big. You're lifting your neck so you can inhale bigger. Try to see more of the room. Try to lift higher. Get more help. Do not take the legs into the air. Push the legs into the floor. Push your pelvis into the floor. If you get 10 or more attempts, if you feel like you've maxed out, your shoulder blades are pinched back, your glutes are pinched tight, energized. You can see the whole room. Still can't get the milk. So elbows forward. We're going to post our arms and we're going to go into the next shape. We're going to call this like a periscope, we can look around a little bit easier from here. Soft your shoulders, soft your neck. Kind of prove it to yourself that your bones, your architecture is holding you up in this shape. Look around. Our next endeavor is to interact with the environment. That means moving these limbs. So what I want you to do, I'm going to give you the straight ahead view, is just walk forward your right arm. Okay. Now, I can't see all of you, but I know that for some, you collapsed. You went to one side to reach and collapsed and lost your base of support. So the way you're going to fight that is you're going to imagine you're pulling yourself across the Sahara Desert and you're going to drag these elbows into your front pockets, and you're going to get a little bit tight underneath your lateral arm, your armpit. You're going to pack the tension in your lats and pull, and you'll be a little more extended. You'll be a little more energized. And then keep pulling, keep squeezing your butt and pull, and you should be able to reach your arm more successfully without collapsing or losing your balance. Your proximal stability, the ability to stabilize your spine, is allowing you to be mobile distally, farther away from center, because you're strong in the center. So you're going to try that 5 to 10 times to either on one end, just walk your hand forward, walk it back. On the other end, you're fully reaching and twisting and looking around. Probably you'll be somewhere in the middle where you feel like you can open up a little, and then you might kind of reach the limits of the strength of your back and the mobility of your spine. Play with that a little bit. If we get 5 to 10 attempts, we're going to try the next evolution. This is still limited. I can interact with my environment. I can maybe grab the shiny keys. Maybe I can get the milk, but not if it's very far away. So we need the next level. And that is crawling, the next archetype. We're going to work into this shape next. Make sure that you're comfortable on your wrists and knees. And we're going to be in 6 points to begin. So your hands, knees, and your feet can all be touching here to begin. This is a really good way to start to access more core strength. We're going to run through a couple of exercises, and then we're going to build it. But it is essentially, it's crawling. It's opposite arm, opposite leg, stabilizing the pelvis. It's where you start to learn how to generate power. This is going to be a gentler version to start. We are still in the reset. We did a recharge. We got the joints loose. And now we're trying to fire up the muscle patterns before we start stretching and strengthening. This is opposite arm, opposite shoulder touch. I'm bringing right hand to left shoulder and vice versa. And while I'm doing it, my low back is totally still, keeping the trunk still. If that is successful, then I want you to try next lifting one leg. This is a bent leg hip extension. So I'm not pushing it out straight necessarily like yoga, just extending from the hip, trying to keep everything pretty still through the lumbar and pelvis, through the lower back. Now, both at the same time. Opposite arm, opposite leg. Let's try 10 per side.
Peter, just to give you a time check, we're just over the halfway point.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to get a few more reps here. And what this can turn into, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, and we may be able to go deeper here at the end with questions or another session. You can build a whole routine, a strength routine out of crawling. Opposite arm, opposite leg. I'm going to start to go into 4-point crawling instead of 6. And this is not a small jump, but a pretty big jump. The knees off the ground. If you go knees off the ground and start to crawl, you're working your core a little harder. Now, if you had something like a yoga block or something you didn't mind falling on the ground, you could put it on your low back and you could try walking around without spilling that. Like I got a little pack of cards here. Can put on my low back, float the knees. I'm going to try to walk without, because getting feedback is important. Having a heavy weight is not. Having some feedback that you're keeping your lumbar, pelvis, and hip neutral is important. Something to balance, or you can film yourself going back and forth with the crawling. So either keep practicing opposite arm, opposite leg lift, or progress to actual locomotion, crawling. I kind of quickly showed that version of knees off the floor. That's not a small jump. That's a pretty big jump, but it's a jump that you want to start to make for strength. To get the knees floating is where we'd be heading over time. This archetype, we're going to change it next into, we're headed towards a push-up. It's going to be 1/2 of what we're trying to accomplish for the strength program. Something for the upper body, something for the lower is the goal. Push-up is our archetype for the upper body, and squatting. Squatting is our archetype for the legs today. So we're going to use the shape that we got to here, the 6 points or 4 points crawling, to start to introduce push-up. I'm going to inch back the knees, but not pull my whole body back in space. So say that again. I'm going to show that again. I'm walking my knees back, which is extending my hips, but I'm not moving my whole spine. I'm still stacked over my shoulders. As you open your hips up enough that you feel able to squeeze your butt a little bit. Your hips are a little bit extended, and we're not way out here like a cobra, but we're not rounded either. You're going to try to lower yourself down right into the floor. Now, vertical forearms is a trick here I'm looking for. So I can't be like way out here where they're collapsed. I got to draw the arms in a little bit to the ribs so that this forearm line is pretty vertical and not anything too weird. To press to straight, to lower down. Your baseline for strength for today, something we can try to look to find, is 5 sets of 5 push-ups, no missed repetitions, and a little bit of rest in between sets. Now, depending on where you're at, that could be anything from cakewalk to way too much, not happening today. 5 sets of 5 is what you would work to over time. You can use angles higher elevation to make the push-up more accessible. I'm going to give you an example here with the couch. A little turn. So I'm taking my surface higher up, more forgiving angle, allows me to have my hips open so I can squeeze my butt. The pelvis stays still as I transfer the energy through it. I'd like to be able to do 5 repetitions. 5 sets of 5 would be your baseline. You would be trying to do that 3 or more times per week. Now, there's a lot of ground to cover and we won't get it all done in an hour, but somewhere between that 2 arms version with elevation, even if you were on the wall doing it, it's okay. You would start somewhere, all the way to a 1 arm, 1 leg push-up. That's the opposite extreme. You were working on the foundation of it by crawling. That's opposite arm and opposite leg. Let me go a little further. Setting up my full push-up would be a progression. And if I could get my 5 sets of 5, then I might want to progress further still. It's a pretty big jump to go from 2 arm push-ups to single arm push-ups. So I'm going to give you a few options. Here's one. Leave your knees to the ground. Okay, I'm going to leave my knees to the ground like I did earlier. And I'm not going to entirely do a 1 arm push-up. I'm going to let this arm slide. If you had a French mover, like one of those little sliders, you can buy expensive fitness sliders. If you have a small ball to put this hand on, that would work too. I'm just going to let my hand slide out today. So here's my push-up. Try to load the left arm almost exactly the same, but I'm letting the other side lengthen out and then shorten. Try to find a range. This is assuming you've already got 5 sets of 5 with your 2 arms push-up. You need to find a version of the single arm push-up that allows you to get to 5. Maybe it's straight legs, but with a sliding hand. Okay, maybe bent legs. Maybe you don't need the slider as much. You can get just a pure 1 hand behind the back. Where you're headed over time is opposite arm, opposite leg lifted. Now that's work even without the push-up. You'd want to practice just creating the stable position of opposite arm, opposite leg. So I'm rooting, squeezing my butt, peeling the weight off of 1 arm, peeling the weight off of 1 leg, getting used to that shape. It could be quite a while before you're single arm pushing, but you can immediately find a place where you can do 5 sets of 5. As you get stronger, 5 sets of 5 with 2 arms, you should try to progress to single arm versions. Maybe you're going to be on the wall at first and just lowering into the wall and pushing away, but you can start to make these progressions. 2 legs, 1 arm, awesome. 1 arm, 1 leg would be the kind of the end of the line there before we started to have to using some other tricks to make things difficult. This is trying to use your push for strength, not for endurance per se, right? I'm not doing reps after reps. We're using it for strength. And that's why the rep range is relatively low, 5, and the sets are relatively low. You don't want to miss reps. The only times you're going to miss reps is when you're trying out something new, trying to go a little lower than you did before, trying a new style. But day in, day out, your 5 sets of 5, it should be difficult, but no missed repetitions, so that you're not beating yourself up, especially if you're still doing a lot of training. In addition to your strength and conditioning, you're doing a lot of wushu. You don't need to overkill. You want your strength training to support the sport, not take over what you're doing. So you don't major in minors. Keep it simple, but also try to keep it interesting and challenging. Single arm push-up, 2 arms push-up, there's a lot of wiggle room there. We can ride the line. I'll offer some different variations of pushing in future seminars. Today, we're trying to get comfortable with the most basic push-up that'll help you get started. 5 sets of 5, 3 times a week. You're getting stronger right away. And then maybe starting to play into some of the single arm versions. There are some tactics that could help you get stronger your push-up. We're going to do that now, and then we're going to go into squats archetype. First exercise I would try to get stronger push-ups is a hard style plank. So you might know planks, you might be doing planks already. I'm going to give my spiel on the hard style version. Hard style version, I'm going to keep the elbows in the beginning right under the shoulders, and then I'm going to walk them in a tiny bit more narrow than my shoulders. Slight mechanical disadvantage. I'm going to let the elbows go forward of the shoulders just an itty bitty tiny bit. So instead of here, I've gone slightly more narrow and slightly forward. You can get more pinch. Your tailbone is not totally neutral. You're actually going to tuck under a little bit to squeeze your butt. It looks like such. I'm going to try to pull my elbows towards my knees, like there's a little flame candle underneath my belly button. Don't get burned on the belly. Push one leg to straight, clench your glutes. 2 legs to straight, clench your glutes. Pull the elbows towards the toes. Zip up the front thighs. Make your front thighs tighter. Squeeze your buns. Try to crack a walnut there. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Pull, 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 pull. Breathe. If we do a hard style plank, 20 seconds is usually enough. 20 seconds of trying to create as much tension as possible. And I like that better for your martial arts practice than doing like 2 or 3 minutes of just holding the plank. I want you to hold the plank very, very intensely, and it will have more carryover to strength and not endurance necessarily. Okay. So hard style plank will help as an accessory exercise to your push-ups. If your push-ups are not improving, you need to spend some time on that plank, maybe doing 2 or 3 sets per workout of 20 to 30 seconds high tension. And then when I create my push-up again, I'm trying to make my push-up like a plank. I'm pulling the palms towards the thighs, glutes tight, abs brace, and very similar, trying to carry that energy over. And then later when you're doing your wushu, same. You're using a lot of the same muscles. The other exercise I want to show you besides the hard style plank that will improve your push-ups is the hollow body hold. And it's very similar to the hard style plank if you were suddenly rolled on your back. So I'm going to lay to the back and demonstrate a hollow body hold and talk about some progressions. In this exercise, you could have a towel or a band, or imagine a little slip of paper underneath your lower back. Eliminate that space by lengthening your tailbone or tucking under as we did earlier. The low back will press into the floor. There's no space. My abs are getting a little tighter, like a belly laugh, clearing your throat, sneeze. Get that tension, okay? Keep the tension, no space under the lower back. Tuck your chin, reach for your heels. Okay, exhale, lift. Inhale, hold it. Tension, tension, tension. Exhale, come down. Good. Again, exhale, lift. Tension, tension, tension. Inhale, hold it. Exhale, down. One more. Inhale, prep. Exhale, hold it. Lift up. Inhale, hold it. Exhale, hold it. We're just going to hold it. We're going to continue to hold that position. Now, to add pieces, I'm bringing one leg up, still holding, 2 legs up, still holding. This is essentially the foundation for your hollow body shape. I'm going to add some layers. One leg straight, other leg straight. One arm back, other arm back. Holding that high tension, breathing through it 20, 30 seconds at a time, using the variation that works for you today. And so maybe that's just coming up with the feet down, abs, abs, abs. Hold it, come down. Over time, you're holding longer. You're adding leverage. And I think in another session, we'll practice like some of the rocking elements. But let me show you how similar they really are. This is my hard style plank. glutes tight, pull. If I just kind of fall over, hollow body. Hard style plank, hollow body. Very similar, they've just been flipped over. And you can practice keeping that tension from one shape into the next shape. It will help your push-ups a lot. The next archetype is squatting. So we're going to switch gears for a moment. I'm going to give you a power stretch, load a stretch for strength that will help a lot with the squatting archetype. And then we'll build into some options. This first shape is called the tactical frog. And lots of modalities have a frog stretch of some sort, gymnastics and dance. I'm going to try to push the knees as far apart as comfortable and flex the hips. I'm pulling my hips back. My feet are turned outward. If that's not possible, your feet can be turned inward. You can still get some good out of this is where it's starting. I'm pushing the knees further apart as I feel I can. I'm trying to pull my hips backward into more flexed position, more flexion. And we'll do this about 10 times, 2, 3, 4 seconds back and ease off. Now, remember what we did in the recharge. We didn't just go front to back. We also went side to side. As you go side to side, see if you can create more space for the inner legs. And if you went front to back and you went side to side, then you should try to go corner to corner. Try to get into your left back pocket, right back pocket, left front pocket. Hit those corners. If there's a pool table on the floor, right? We're doing this on the pool table. Hit all your angles and even circles, Draw a circle with your belly button. Now, once the knees cannot be pushed out any further, then we're going to bend our elbows. We're going to get a little lower in the tactical frog. Pull your hips back. Abs stay braced like a plank. It's a little like the plank. I'm not dumping my low back into an arch in either direction. It's pretty neutral. It's braced. Now we're going to try the strength portion here. Pull the elbows down. You're in your frog. You're going to try to internally rotate your hip. It's like a can opener. I'm going to show both sides. I'm going to lift and lift. I'm internally rotating the hip joint. In. Let me do the same side a couple times. You can see that. I'm trying to minimize the movement of my back, minimize the movement of my upper body and shoulders. Get that hip rotation. Now, I talked about before that non-denominational squat and just having a good kind of universal squat position because there's lots of different squats, so it would be good. Where you're set up now, you're froggy. If you flex your feet, push yourself back, you might be able to get back into your squat shape. So if that seemed like a little too much, too fast at once, my feet are turned out. I'm rocking my froggy. I'm going to turn the feet in a little, just a little. Really try to wedge my hips back. And I'm going to roll myself back up. So the tactical frog can help you find a really good squat archetype, find a good shape for that squat. And you can work back and forth through them. You could do your 5 push-ups that you're supposed to do, 5 sets of 5, right? And then you could be walking back and you're ready to do your squatting. Squatting, I would recommend similar, the 5 sets of 5 as the baseline. Wushu athletes are probably going to have a little higher threshold for their squatting. So we want some harder versions. I'm going to offer a few. Off your baseline squat, we're going to try Cossack squat, which effectively creates like a single leg weight bearing. I'm going to turn my stance about 3 feet wide. I'm going to pull the weight to just one leg. Load up that side like our poo-boo or drop stance, except I don't care as much what's happening to this leg. No points will be deducted for strength. This is a way to load that single leg in a way that is similar to a single-legged effort. Went 5 times that side, I'm gonna go 5 times this side, and that would make up 1 set. If this is the version of squatting that I'm using, 5 sets of 5 really is 5 reps on either side. Okay, so it's like this squat, but we just kind of took one leg out of it. Double leg squat, there's my split. And same but different. We're gonna single leg load the squat with like a shibu, like crossing stance, cross step. Back leg steps behind. The back leg doesn't really bear a lot of the weight. It's this lead leg. And you could cross balance squat. 5, double leg, single leg, double leg, single. And again, I do my 5 per side to equal 1 set. Cross balance lunge, drop. The tempo for strength was a little like we warmed up. Try to take about 2 to 4 seconds. You can be a little faster, slower, but smooth is the name of the game. Now, again, we're probably not getting into anything too extreme for a Wushu athlete, so we're going to go a little bit further. You're going to try a very narrow squat. This is a good way to test out for building the pistol. Very narrow squat, squeeze your knees together. See how low you can go. And we'll try that about 5 times. I'm using my arms to counterbalance me so my hips can sit backward more. I'm trying to let the knees track forward, but the hips back. Very narrow squat. You might have seen this before, like a Shaolin style, doing it right in front of a wall and trying to minimize the forward lean of the head. Now, finding that you have that range of motion is important. There's another way we can test it. I think in another class I might do that, some drills to improve it. Because a lot of times what limits people in these motions is their ankle mobility. And there's some stuff we can do, maybe another session with loaded mobility to get the ankle freed up a little bit with some weights. But right now, I want to give you another version of that narrower squat. This is the hunter squat. I'm going to take my both feet narrow, take the weight off of one leg and slide it back so that my empty foot is just about in line with my loaded heel. Most of the weight's on one leg, but I'm still able to disperse the weight. It's a very narrow squat. I just switched the unloaded leg to 5 or so. Okay. Airplane squat, the next progression. I'm going to use almost the same shape as that hunter squat, but I'm actually going to take the weight off entirely. It will look like I'm going to touch down the floor. It doesn't matter if you actually touch or not. Rise up. You can touch down again for balance or remain. This is a single-legged squat, airplane squat. You're creating a lot of demand on the hip, knee, and ankle. You're not changing very much the shape of the spine. That rule is a little bit broken when we do the pistol. You might get a little pelvic tilt. It's okay. The pistol is the full single-legged squat. We're getting pretty close to it with the airplane. Okay, so that's a good progression tool. And then further still would be to completely empty one leg, like we did in the airplane, but send it forward as a counterbalance. And that's the pistol squat. And you'd be trying to work up to 5 sets, 5. There could be a lot of ground to make up in between, right? So you find where you can do today. We can use leverage tools again. So like my couch I use for the push-up, and use my couch or chair here too. One leg back. This is similar to a split squat or Bulgarian split squat, but it's a single leg squat. It's a way for me to load up quite a bit of intensity when I don't have equipment. pistol, hunter squat, airplane. I'm really fully emptying the leg, but it's not as demanding as the pistol on the hips. And then having some support, something to put a back leg on, a block or a chair or a bolster. Got to be honest about where you are, that it's doable. I mentioned, like, you don't want to fail a bunch of reps. Make it easy enough that you're not failing very often your attempts. Try to work up to 5 sets of 5. This is for strength, not endurance or conditioning per se. We want strength first, and then you build endurance on top of strength. Otherwise, you're just building endurance potentially on top of dysfunction, and the weakness doesn't get addressed. So if it needs to be easy for a while, let it be easy. And your leg work might be very different than your push-up. Push-ups, you're trying to work towards a version that's a single arm, single leg, maybe push up. And then we're working towards the pistol. Not terribly complicated once you find a version that works for you, and then you progress and progress over time. And there may be some tricky spots to get past, and I'd be happy to try to help. I'm available to meet one-on-one training and maybe other events we can do together here, but to troubleshoot if you feel stuck between a transition, like I got that 2-arm push-up, but I do not know how to get to a 1-arm, stuff like that, maybe require some individual programming or troubleshooting. But I hope this helps you in a general way to see that you can get quite strong with just your body weight. It doesn't need to be super complex. The play element hopefully is coming from your martial arts practice and other things you're doing. And so you don't need your workout to be too sexy, too playful. It can be very straightforward, gives you more time to do the other stuff, because it's easy to major in minors to get so good at the conditioning that you actually get less payback in your sport. Like it's definitely easy to do too much in the weight room and not be on the competition floor enough. But I say the other part of that is play, is having enough time to play with different versions and stuff. And so that might be
Peter,
something we can touch on. Yes.
Looks like we are running out of time.
Okay.
I know you're wrapping up. And maybe some last comments, any preview things that you're going to be working on in future sessions?
Yes. So what I would like to do in future sessions is teach you loaded stretching. We kind of did it by position today. In the frog, your joints were extra stressed, extra loaded because of position. We could also load you up with weight. I'll give you an example. I would love to do a class with a kettlebell or light dumbbell, probably that you could use either what you had access to or even a sandbag. But let's imagine right now I got my kettlebell or dumbbell. I've got my classic wide angle stretch. What I would like to teach you to do is when, where, and how it's appropriate to take that weight, like put it behind you and load up your wide angle stretch and get super strong. Some of the small muscles there, or some of the other patterns that we got into. If your ankle mobility, we can load like with the kettlebell here, and I don't know if you can see my feet. Just kind of stress and roll over the ankle, get it stronger there, as well as some classic strength exercises that we can learn how to deadlift or swing. Exercises for power is where we're going to go.
Looks like we are out of time. Thank you to Peter Wolf from Rogue Wolf Training. He'll be doing some more sessions in the future. This was just a preview for that. Next up, we have Benny Meng, who'll be doing a seminar on Wing Chun. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for logging in all the way from Oregon, and see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to seeing you again, guys.